I have a question for you. Are you an architect and are you broke? If the answer is yes, it's what I've suspected for many years, as I am indeed an architect myself. This podcast is about debt in the profession of architecture, and I want to hear from you. Are you just surviving month to month with no extra money for savings? Or are you seriously broke and in debt and stress and worry about your income? Or does your wife, husband or significant other earn substantially more than you, which gives you a great life, given the ability to choose your clients, when you work and who for? Or have you attained financial freedom in architecture? If you're in the first two categories, surviving month to month or facing financial difficulties, how is this affecting your mental health? Are you suffering from depression or even despair? We need to talk about the impact of debt, but also, more importantly, how to get out of debt. And I need you to come forward to make this podcast possible. Welcome to The Broke Architect. You will hear from real architects with very real problems, and maybe some will offer some real solutions so that you never become a broke architect. Please share, subscribe and comment to support the channel. I have with me Jim Rooney, who is an architect based in London. And firstly, Jim, I just want to welcome you to the first season of The Broke Architects, and just to say that, thank you for responding to my post on LinkedIn. And, I'm really hoping that more architects will come forward to talk about the issue of what we're talking about today, which is money in architecture. So first of all, just maybe, just let me know, how are you today?
Yeah, very good, thanks. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, wonderful. I think we'll just start this discussion really. If you can just tell me a little bit about your background and growing up, and because I know that you used to play in a jazz band. So
I played in a band. Yeah, it wasn't a jazz band, but yeah. So I actually grew up in France. Moved to the UK to study architecture when I was 18 at university. Did sort of about a year and a half, and then became quite disillusioned with the content of the course, and decided that I would drop out, move to London and pursue a career in music, which I did for 10 years, culminating in essentially running a business. So yeah, then I had kids, and decided that I would go back to university, finish my degree, do a master's, etc., so that I could then start working as an architect again.
I think when we think of musicians, we think of people maybe with not so much money, and unless you're highly successful. So I'm just wondering why you made that switch. And I know you answered it, maybe your passion was also within architecture, but what did you understand, that it would mean from switching from a musician to an architect?
Well, to be honest with you, music doesn't really provide a very stable income at the best of times. I mean, it's not just about whether or not you're lucky enough to make money. I think you can make money, and especially if you're a session musician where you go and you play other people's music, then there's definitely money to be made. But that's not what we were trying to do. We were trying to do original music, and that's much harder to make money from. We did make money. We were able to pay all the musicians that we working with.
Right.
But that didn't leave me and my business partner with very much at all at the end of it. And so there was two main reasons to go back and complete my architecture studies, really. One was the sort of lifestyle of being a musician wasn't really conducive to having a good quality of time and life with my kids as they were growing up. And then it was about securing a more stable income. And so I'd already started down the route of architecture, and so it just made sense to complete that, and to go back into that profession. I mean, interestingly enough, once I completed my part one, I did a year out with a small company in London, and funnily, I sort of read an article that was written in the AJ by the director of the company, and one of the questions were that the interviewer was asking him was, what advice would you give a young person coming into the industry? And his answer was, incredible. He just said, don't. There's no money in architecture, don't do it.
But you didn't listen to him.
I could have. It did definitely make me sit up straight when I read that. But at that stage, I'd completed my degree. I was already on the path, and I was already in it. I think the question was, or his answer was more geared to someone who was considering starting down that route. I was already, I jumped in and I was already in it. But yeah, no, it's funny because this is what we're talking about, right? It's about, I made the choice to go from being a musician to architecture in order to secure that stable income, which it is a stable income in comparison, but it's not necessarily a sustainable income. And that's what I think we're discussing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I'm so interested as well that you, there's a perception I think about architects working in London, which is where you're based, that you probably earn more as you would in Manchester, say, or the north of the UK. But London is so expensive, and you've got a profession that is relatively low paid compared to, say, a doctor or a lawyer. That's what the stats tell us. So right. Are you finding it, before we get into it, how are you finding it? Are you finding it tough?
I mean, yeah, it has been tough. It's been a long journey to get to where I am today, where I'm starting to sort of feel like I'm getting somewhere. But certainly, for me, coming back sort of 10 years out of the industry back into it, I was obviously 10 years older than most of the people that I was competing with for jobs, and I had a family. Therefore, like you say, all of those costs are on top of somebody else who doesn't have those concerns. And so, this is kind of my gripe, I guess, with the industry and the profession, is that very often you'll hear an employer say, well, we pay the going rate for someone at your level. But that doesn't take into consideration all of the other aspects of being a human being. Whether or not you have a family, compare someone who lives in a shared flat with other people to someone who can't do that because they have a family, and therefore they have to rent either a flat or a home that they are the sole income for. So that this is the thing, is that when people say, well, we pay the going rate, it's very reductive and very overly simplistic way of working out what you should be paying someone. And then there's the added aspect of that, which you and I have discussed before, which is that architects, many ways, we're our own worst enemies, because there's always the next guy that's willing to do it for less than you. So you're kind of fighting this downward spiral all the time. And that's why we are where we are as a profession, I think.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your honesty there, Jim. It's and the next question I really want to ask is quite a personal question. It's if you have debt or you have experienced debt, let's just say, because you said that things are improving. I'm really interested in what it's like to carry the weight of being in debt, because I think when I look back to getting into architecture, I would never have seen myself really worrying about money and debt.
Yeah.
I would have thought that's what I put in the effort for to get to this level of professionalism. But what do you think?
This is the thing, right? Because architects, we have to study for 7 years. Now, admittedly, some of that time can be in employment, and it's becoming increasingly popular and encouraged to do that through sort of apprenticeships. But certainly in my time, 5 years of full-time education with the measly grants and maintenance loans and stuff that you get, you're basic, and because it's a very kind of resource heavy subject where you have to pay for materials and printing and all of that kind of stuff, you're starting out basically getting into debt. That's the I would imagine there are very, very few architecture students who are not heavily in debt. And so that's where you start your career. You go from that position of accruing debt into the workplace. You're already on a losing battle, because you're basically having to play catch up against, overdrafts and loans and all the rest of it. And then when you couple that with, the sort of, I would argue, fairly low comparatively salaries that you get, especially if you're part one or part two, then it's really tough. And the sort of the mental health side of that can't be overlooked, because what are we doing? We're making ourselves miserable in order to do this job, and getting into debt, everything that comes with that in terms of mental health and physical health as a result. It's not good. And so, definitely massive room for improvement in the profession. But it's the difficulty that I have is really knowing where and how that help can come from. Do you know what I mean? Because it's we've got the ARB, and we've got the RIBA, but neither of these two bodies appear to be doing very much on this subject, from what I've seen anyway. So you are kind of left on your own to get to grapple with it, which is, like I say, is really difficult. And so, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that, I spent probably the last 10 years or so in debt, trying to overcome that debt. And I'm starting to get to a point now where I can see the end of it, but I'm still not there. So
that brings me on to the next question. It's a question I'm asking people: do you have any savings? If you're climbing out of debt, I don't think you will.
No, I don't. And this is the thing, right? So, obviously there are societal and economic factors at play, where we've seen the value of land and housing skyrocket over the last 20 years. And so, but no, rent is, if I look at my salary without taking into consideration my partner's salary, my rent is 2/3 of my income.
Wow.
So that tells you immediately, that this is just like, for someone like me who has kids, it's really, really tough, and you kind of have to rely on your partner doing well as you to kind of see any route out of it. This is the really interesting thing, is that when I met my wife, she was a teacher, and she had been a teacher for 10 years, and she was out earning me as a teacher.
Wow.
Right. So again, that kind of points to the fact that there's something desperately wrong here. For I'd been working as an architect at that time for about 6 years. And for a teacher to be out earning you, a qualified architect, it's just, and that's not to say anything really, but we know that teachers are underpaid too, right?
Yeah,
so that's
right. So architects are very much underpaid. I was just thinking, just wanted to drop this one here about what you were saying on the other question about, carrying this debt, and that you build up as a student. It's getting to the point really now where, unless you've got very wealthy parents, that you're not going to go and study architecture, but yet architecture schools are full to bursting with people wanting to study architecture.
Yeah, well, this is it, and the kind of the additional factor here is that we've seen very positive moves in the RIBA and the ARB to try and diversify the profession, because, as we know, I mean, I think it was 2 years ago I read that it was 70% white male as architects. But this is my real concern, is that given this, what we're talking about, the idea that the most privileged demographic is struggling in this profession, and then we're inviting marginalized people to come in and do this profession with all of the additional things that means. Yeah. That's really scary to me, because it's kind of like, fine, encourage it, but then what are you actually doing to make it sustainable for those people to do this? And that's my real fear, because it's like, if I'm struggling as one of the most privileged people walking the earth, then God knows what other people must be going through to try and get get a job, even, but that's kind of an aside in a way, I suppose.
No, it's a very good point. Absolutely, very, very good point, and I absolutely agree with you there. Again, going back to, I guess, you've moved on and you're an architect now with years of experience, but do you really feel that university prepared you for the business side of architecture? And I think what I mean here, if you're a salaried architect, you still need to understand, when you're working in a practice, what them fees are, and are them fees sustaining you in order to deliver projects properly. Yep. So, what was your experience of your education at university?
Well, I mean, it was very, very light on the ground in terms of business and practice management until you get to sort of part 3, really. And even then, it's much more about the sort of legal aspect of it, and the sort of, insurance side of being an architect, saving your skin, and making sure you don't get into legal issues, rather than how to run a business successfully and what you need to do that. And so I was very lucky that I went from my part 2 into a small practice, and I learned the ropes on the job. Sort of, number 2 in command, had to learn all of this stuff, because it was vital for, the longevity and sustainability of the business, that I knew the ins and out of every job, how to prepare a fee, how to quote, and make sure that our fees are sustainable, so that the business can afford to pay us. But I know for a fact that most architects still, and especially in larger firms, still don't have any of that experience, right? So I was talking to some of my peers when I was doing my part 3, who were working at much larger companies, and they just had no idea what fees the company was signing up to on projects. And this is a conversation that I think all architects should be having, is that, how can you perform on a project if you don't know what the fee is?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what the fee is, then you don't know how much resource you've got, how much time you can allocate to that job before you start biting into your profit margin or losing money. And this is fundamental, right? This is like basics, business 101.
It is. I mean, the basic thing is of having, this is the amount of hours you've got to do that project or that drawing. And at least you know where you are, and if you're spending too much time on a particular aspect of the project, at least you're aware of that, and you can make changes and shout up. But if you're blindly filling in your timesheets every week, like you said, in big practices, and you have no idea on how you're performing, that's dangerous.
It really is. It really is. And it's interesting. And I think a lot of businesses still operate that way, which just to me, and it's a shame really, because I think practice owners perhaps are doing it because they're thinking, well, I don't want to concern my architects with that side of it. It's not really their responsibility or their burden to carry. But I think that they would also be quite surprised at how eager and how useful it would be for their architects to know this stuff, because I think it would kind of, sharpen the mind of that worker, and improve productivity, efficiency within the business. And so that's all good, right? These are all good things. And you're educating your employee about, really crucial matters of how to run a business, which is also good, because a problem shared, as we know. This is kind of the crux of the issue, isn't it? Is that actually, as architects, we are not good business people. We're not business savvy enough as a profession. And I think it's almost like a fear. It's almost like a dirty word, business in architecture. And it shouldn't be, because fundamentally that's what it is. It is a business. And yes, it's creative, and yes, it's, all of those things too. But at the end of the day, you have to put money, you have to put food on the table. You have to put money in the bank. You have to pay your rent. You have to be able to do these things in order for that creativity to be sustainable.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. And maybe just let's go back to you and the personal side of this aspect. And has the issue of debt in your life at any point led to you, the common thing I think with architects is always alcohol, I think, because we spent 7 years at university. A lot of people use that to relax or forget about the debt. And is that something that's affected you, if you were being honest?
Yeah, I think it has, definitely. I think that there was definitely several years going back, a few years now, where I undoubtedly was drinking too much. And it was as a result of the fact of, getting sort of letters through the door, final demand letters and this, that, and the other. And you're just thinking, Christ, how am I going to get through this? And so you turn to whatever vice it might be. to kind of forget that that's there. And that's the mental health side of things, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm fortunate that I came through that, and I know that some people don't, which is really sad. But I was very fortunate that I was able to get the help that I needed at the time, that I really needed it. So I never really got to rock bottom. I was pretty close, but that's in the past. And there's no doubt about it that having debt, that level of debt where, you're getting letters through the door and threats of bailiffs and all the rest of it. It's not pleasant.
Absolutely.
Not pleasant.
And I was just before we leave this subject of that personal debt is the impact on your family as well. It must have an impact. It must be something that you talked about.
Because you as a parent, your kids respond to you and they see you, so they feed off you, your energy that you can give them. So if you're spending a lot of your time worried and concerned about monetary things, that obviously has an impact on the amount and the quality of the time that you can spend with your family. And that's your wife, your partner, or your kids, or even your parents and your sister or brother or whatever. These types of relationships definitely are affected by being in debt, because you're so depressed about the fact that you've got this thing in your life that you can't really control, or that you're struggling to control because the income that you've got isn't meeting the required level to dig you out of that hole. So yeah, for sure, it's.
Did you seek any sort of help, and you've maybe navigated your way through this, and still are, but did you ever seek any expert opinion or help from family, or just trying to understand that as well?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's personal to each individual.
Yeah.
I spent a long time in denial. That I had a problem, that this was a problem in my life. And so it was kind of like a downward trend, to the point where I just kind of, one day I just sat there and I thought, I can't keep doing this, because if I do, it's going to end up in tragedy. And so at that stage, I reached out to my local GP and got referred to see a therapist, and did therapy for a good year with a really great therapist. Again, very fortunate, because, first time lucky. And that's not always the experience of people with therapy. So again, very fortunate to have been able to reach out and get the help that I needed at the right time. But having said that, I definitely recognize that I could have done that way earlier. And that comes back to the personal issue, whereas that, when you're depressed, there's the sort of like the natural human reaction to that is to kind of deny it. You don't want to admit that you're in this terrible state, until it gets to breaking point, basically. Yeah. So yeah. That's my story.
No, thank you for being so open about that. And I guess looking back, if you were to give advice to young architects, just qualifying, coming out into the profession, is there any sort of advice you would give them in terms of debt?
In terms of debt, it's inevitable that you're going to get into debt. So then it's just a question of how you respond to that. And I think that the one piece of advice I would definitely give to any architecture student is that you might not be getting the information that you need in terms of business knowledge from the course that you're on, but that knowledge is out there. And having an understanding of finance is helpful, not only in your professional life, but also in your personal life, right? Because essentially all individuals, we are running a business. We are a business, right? We have costs, we have overheads, we have all the things that a business has, and we have to make a profit. Right? It's exactly the same. So you can apply those things back to your life, and then you can start to kind of break down and strategize for how to deal with the debt that you are accruing and that you inevitably are going to accrue, because that's just, unless you're doing apprenticeship, you know, and you go the traditional route, you are going to build up debt. And so then it's a question of how you handle that debt. And so, yeah, my advice would be seek out financial guidance. Books are, for me, like, I love reading business books. I know that makes me a bit of a square, but I find it fascinating, right? And you're always learning about it. Doesn't matter how far you think you are with your knowledge. You pick up another book, and then there's another gem in there, and you're just like, wow, this is great. You know, I can apply this back to my own finances, and that means that I can, you know, achieve more and do more and have more time and all the rest of it. So, yeah, that would be my advice. Yeah. Be interested in business. Be interested in finance, because as well as helping you in your professional life, it also helps you with your personal life.
No, thank you. And the last question I'm going to throw at you is a poll finished last night. That's really interesting. I thought we could talk about this. So I put up 7 days ago a poll basically asking, if you're an architect, do you feel financially secure, or do you feel broke heading into 2023? Because we've just gone into 2023, and the options were these. You know, option one is it's about just surviving month to month with no money to save, which I think you know, we'll see what the results are. I'll reveal them. But answer two is that you are seriously broke and in debt and stress and worry about your income.
Yeah.
Answer three is about the fact that you've attained financial freedom in architecture. Ooh, wonderful. And answer four is that your wife, partner, or significant other earns substantially more than you and gives you a great life, giving you the ability to choose your clients or when you work and who for. And you know, there are always going to be some very differences within each of these four, but the results are quite shocking. As you know, we had 13,000 people view the post, and 273 people voted. And the results were that 61% were just getting by monthly, just monthly, and 13% are seriously broke. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Well, I mean, what's really interesting about your poll, Jason, is that really only one of those answers is about having achieved a sustainable income through architecture. And so that tells me that the other three responses, those people are not in a sustainable situation. Or, you know, you could argue that getting month to month is not really sustainable, though, is it? Because it's kind of like, there's no pleasure in that.
There's a risk, isn't there? Month to month, and you lose your job.
It's getting by month to month. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as you say, it's shocking. It's shocking that only one out of every 6 architects is actually making a decent enough income where they feel they have freedom. And so if you flip that, 5 out of 6 architects are basically in a position that is not sustainable. I mean, that's just alarming. It really is. It's so sad.
It is 2023. And to have that, I found it quite depressing, but not surprising.
I'll tell you what, Jason, when I saw the results of that last night, I was really angry. Really angry. I couldn't believe it. Well, I could believe it. That's the sad thing about it, is that I could believe it. It was shocking, but not surprising, as people say. You know, what do we do? This is the thing, right? What do we do about this?
What do we do
And
indeed?
I constantly struggle with. Yeah.
And I think the thing that you can't see, and my listeners won't be able to know about, is the people who actually said they were seriously broke. And it makes, when I can see who these people work for and the
Right.
positions they work for in these big top 10 practices, you would be,
Oh my God.
I just, it's very, very surprising to me. But yeah, it's we don't want to end on a sort of a negative note. You are practicing architecture.
Yeah.
You are getting yourself out of debt.
Mm.
So what does the future hold for you, Jim?
I think the future is bright. And I think that, having these conversations, whilst, like you say, the poll is fairly negative, I think that it's about, empowering the next generation of architects to have these discussions, to bring these topics up with their employer, and or if they're running their own business, to then empower them to be able to do that in a sustainable way. So that's the positive spin I put on it, is that, we can, it's up to us to make that change as a profession. And I think that it's entirely reasonable and possible for us to do it. To me, it just doesn't make sense that a career in architecture, which, I love my job. I think we're so lucky to do what we do. Every day is different. Every project is different. Every client is different. There's no repetitive anything about architecture. It's always something new, and it's exciting because of that. But the idea that you can't make money out of it just needs to change, because you can. There are businesses out there that are making money and that do turn a profit. So we just need to learn from them and apply what they're doing to the rest of the profession.
Yeah, and more of these people who are making profits in architecture need to go into the universities and try and tell them how they do it.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. More industry coming into the universities would be fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jim. You've been a wonderful guest. I appreciate your honesty and coming on the first series of The Broke Architect.
No problem. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Now I'd just like to say something about the Architects Benevolent Society. This is a society that is dedicated to supporting past and present members of the architectural community and their families in times of need, from those starting out on their careers to those who are now in retirement. They help people who have experienced illness, accident, redundancy, unemployment, bereavement, or other personal difficulties. Now, support ranges from confidential advice to financial assistance. Now, my ask to you all who's listening is consider giving a donation. There's many ways you can do this, and you can even volunteer for the ABS and even fundraise. And also, you can also leave a gift in your will. So who do the Architects Benevolent Society help? Well, architects, architectural technologists, landscape architects, and employees of architectural practices, but also the dependents of the professions I've just stated there. They also help and support students of architecture, architectural technology, or landscape architecture. Now, for more information on eligibility and to apply for help, please go to the ABS website, which is absnet.org.uk. Thank you. Please share, subscribe, and comment to support the channel.
The Broke Architect. The Broke Architect. The The broke architect.